out here.
It's perfect as well because
so Toby's gonna swap over to the Mercy. Sim to Ash. I was expecting a Tracer actually.
Rather frustrating to deal with, although if Arn's
So before even jumping in, let me look at these comps.
manages to get high ground.
We got Sombra Ash versus Ash Pharah. This is a notoriously good Pharah map, but it still slows your tempo down a ton. Not having something like a Sombra or a Tracer to really like get into the enemy backline means like your only engaged tools are going to be from your front line, from your ball player, from your hog player, like finding strong positioning and hooks, or off 6 shots from either of your DPS. There's no real tools from the DPS line to really get in, not like Sombra or Tracer, for example, to coordinate with your ball player or something like that. So I'm expecting Sanfran to try and take a lot of tempo going into this first fight, denying as much space from this Pharah. Like if this Pharah gets to just like play here and just free fire onto the point and Shock remain exposed, like if they stay up here or at this choke and don't make moves to go aggressive into Soul's space, it's probably going to be very hard for them to find openings. But if they can control the Pharah well enough, and if they can take tempo fast enough, I expect Shock to just roll over them this fight, because there's just so much, in my opinion, there's so much more active threat in a Sombra. Also from a Zen, like a ton of damage coming up from Zen, than there is from an active threat from the Pharah. More theoretical damage, but you need to be able to land their shots, and they need to be able to be followed up on.
Round first is Prof is going to be having a little bit of a tougher time. You can see those enlarged portraits there, meaning how
you see Shock's already getting stuffed. This is looking really bad for them, just for this first fight. You do not want to get stuck in this choke.
The best target here, really. I mean, ideally you want to get Marvel right, but even if you catch Gestroff with a hack, there's not much he can really do.
Yeah, they just completely give up that space. They're going to play wide. They're going to look for Sombra openings.
Suffer when they end up getting hacked, and so that is going to be the big target.
Yeah, they just need to make sure Violet and Ons can be like relevant during the fight.
But it's all about just trying to get the angle, because you know where that bar is going to be. The bar is going to be over the
okay, Gesture just goes down.
Drawn by San Francisco.
But already is traded back.
Super traded out.
Still has to deal with Profit, however. Look how close he's to a barrage already.
It's crazy to me that teams have like full committed to their main tank players being the hog player, by the way. That's still crazy to me.
Online. Are the Shock actually going to expect this? I'm not sure they are.
Yeah, they took a little bit too long, I think Shock did. Although, still very winnable.
However, the Shock still control the payload. And with Profit just non-existent here,
it feels like Soul still has an advantage here, yeah, especially with that kill. But yeah, having this high ground for Fitz compared to where Ons was trying to take shots from, it's obviously very favorable for the high ground player.
Yeah, they absolutely have to create
And
it.
yeah,
The reason he's in this roster is because his Ana is so
got a ton of value, but Prophet's actually swapping off to Tracer. It's really just a first fight thing, because again, it doesn't have the tools to create space and to take space like a Sombra or a Tracer do. Did I watch the matches live? I tuned in a bit late, so I missed the beginning of these games, but I'd watched as soon as I woke up. So yeah, that first fight, like, it looked good. Like, Sanfran got the first point, and like they were getting a lot of kills and trades. Prophet going down after the barrage, I mean, it makes sense. The barrage is just kind of a suicide ult, but they knew that they had to make more plays to get back into the point, because even though they had Fitz up here on the Ash and controlling these flanks, and they controlled Super's hog in their hookah side, they still needed more tools to really secure the space on the point and to really make Ons uncomfortable and make Smurf uncomfortable, so that they don't find opportunities to aggress onto Fitz. So coming back on the Tracer, I like that a lot. First fight as Pharah makes sense because you kind of started in neutral space, both teams fighting for the same amount of space. But when you're trying to fight your way into space, Pharah just does not have the tools. Oh my god, Prophet.
So Dynasty, I think you're right.
It's a roll of ball in this comp, disruption, lining up dives with your flanker player. It's basically, you're doing the same job as what a Winston would do in these compositions, where like you're not constantly fighting for solid space, like an individual target or individual location. You're just constantly adapting, similar to how a Tracer would have to adapt to the fight and as it's unfolding. And then anytime individual members or groups of members like Ash Mercy, Ash Ana on Soul's comp or something like that expose themselves, you have time to disrupt them and make sure that they can't have uptime at the same time as their front line. So for example, say Gesture and Marble are going for an aggressive play on their own, and Fitz and Creative want to follow that up by pushing out of the high ground, that's when you'll see Smurf looking for ways onto that high ground to completely disrupt them, completely mitigate their healing and their damage that are going to be coming up because they have to deal with the ball in their face. He's not necessarily going to be looking for his own kills, but he can also go aggressive off these opportunities if they're overexposed, and he can also line up with someone like Striker to finish those kills if they're overexposed.
He just get instantly rest.
Yeah, you really can't try to run the Pharah into Ans. Like, he's just going to punish you.
More often than not, though, Balls is like less of an initiator than Winston because like you can't stay in his zone as often as possible. He'll often be like leaving, kind of like a Tracer himself, in the middle of the fight. Oh my God, Gestures is killing everything. Take resources and make opportunities. Yeah, honestly, I would even say with a Sombra in your team, he's not even the one making opportunities most of the time. He's waiting for the enemy team to expose themselves based on their own aggression or based on them reacting to someone else on your team, like a Hog, like a Sombra. If Sombra finds a good hack, that could lead to someone being overextended because they no longer have cooldowns. If it starts with someone getting hooked and then they try to follow that up by coming out of the woodwork, then Ball can then follow that up. It's not like... It's like uncoordinated, coordinated play. Like they're doing something else than the rest of the team is doing, but they're doing it at the same time for the same team fight, just in like a very split location usually. And then of course there is like the default way of playing Ball too, where you just like follow-up dives, clean up kills, boot people in, force engages that way. But at the highest level, that's a lot less consistent, I would say.
It is an interesting tank combination to be running the Ball and Chain combination with the Hemmant and the Roadhog, because it sometimes can operate a lot like an Orisa and Roadhog used to, because the stuns will lock you up.
We're seeing this Hog Sigma comp a lot on maps that would favor a stronger backline location, but because these backline locations are somewhat exposed, Ball can take a lot of space because of like the short ranges, relatively short ranges, and the decent rollout locations for Ball. Oh, they're just nanoing Hog on cooldown. I'm surprised Super didn't just ult him there. Okay. He's just... Okay, they're just dying? He did get the kill on Gesture, actually, but that's not going to be enough.
Smurf is caught up a little late, so that's going to be a stagger kill. We're going to be at 75% and counting up. Fitz tosses in the Bob. That's such a great point control ultimate, and this Dynamite is enormous.
Beauty.
Insta-killing Arns and Moth. There's not too much like bursting, of course you're relying on the nade really from the Ana to help you through that, but clearly obviously wasn't available. Profit with the pulse bomb, so Dynasty on
I'm glad they nerfed Ashe's dynamite damage. I think her dynamite is actually what leads to a lot of her being as strong as she is, because she's kind of got that identity crisis where she's not really a sniper, she's not really like a main DPS in the same way as like Soldier and McCree. Oh, nice try, Fitz. But also with the dynamite, it almost makes her like a projectile, almost like a Pharah, almost like just around the corners, threat, consistent damage around shields. One of the most important big burst damage if you hit it. They didn't have to invest it. She was just like had too many things in her kit that led to too much.
And also a winning ultimate in EMP.
There's Profit. Dashes in, gets the touch. Now the rest of the Dynasty,
ooh, no hook.
Low ground. Super in a little bit of trouble, ends up getting slept, but however, Gesture's already gone down. Smurf boomed him off the edge. Profit comes back with at least one kill with Strike.
I say it's funny that like main tanks have taken up the Hog role, but the way Hog is played in this comp is actually very similar to a main tank. So it makes a lot of sense. It's just the hero itself does not lend itself to main tank capabilities. It's just that he's so strong in this patch that it makes it work. Like he's still trying to be the first thing in your face, the first thing you need to react to. And given that he's so threatening, if you don't react to it, it can lead to a kill. Whereas like if you don't react to a Winston in your face, sure, it can take you out of the fight for a bit. It'll like block your LOS, stuff like that. But you won't like be completely taken out of the fight by dying. But Hog has that threat, which is crazy on this patch. Nice round for the shock. Like I said, a lot of it seemed like a lot more opportunities for them to get aggressive, even though it felt like they had more retakes that map, I want to say. More opportunities to retake because of the Sombra, at least. And like it didn't seem like a ton of like outplaying by the front line or anything, but Super was definitely doing more from what I saw than Gesture.
Extremely close match. I mentioned that Soul likes to run the Pharah. This is a very good Pharah point.
It is, but again, it does kind of rely on you actually
Again,
controlling
probably
the
only
point
going to see
there.
Farah for the first fight. If they
Shot
win the
end up
first fight, Farah's
controlling
great
high
at holding the
grounds.
space,
Good
but if they lose the
luck
first fight, or if she dies after an
Not
ult,
really
for
gonna get
example,
much done. You have to come
very
through
hard to take
very
space
small
back with the
archways or
Farah,
very
so expecting the same thing.
conveniently like,
Excuse me.
lowered ceilings, I guess. You can just hop over them, of course, but Arn's going to have such a nice sight line. It's all up to the Dynasty here to make the first move and try and get that high ground and take it away
Again,
from the
very good
shot.
ball
Looks like
map,
they've
so
done
we're seeing ball
just
instead of
that.
Sigma on these Koth
Another,
maps.
a bit of annoyance for Profit as well, of course, is the Discord orb from Violet Hex. It can do so much extra damage. Even
Yeah,
people
just
like
kind of waiting
Slur
to see where
needing
their
to
backline
Profit
goes,
as
where
well.
they try to set up, and then they'll look for something aggressive here. Shock will. They're just playing around Profit right now. They don't need to go aggressive because the sight lines are decent enough for Ons to be able to take shots if they position properly. Hard for Profit to get in here. But Shock actually giving up a lot of space. I was expecting when Shock were forced back into here, because obviously Farah spam is going to force your tanks back eventually. At the very least, it's going to force your Hog back. But as soon as they get stuck in here, I would have liked to see faster rotations to one of the sides. Technically, they could have gone back to their end, but I would have preferred to see them go towards Soul's spawn. And really just retake part of the map, because as soon as you're not doing anything with this comp, the enemy team is surrounding you with like Fitz pushing from main, Profit from above you with the opportunity of going around, Ball. Then once you're stuck in these locations, even though no one's individually separated, that's when Ball can find a ton of value by just disrupting a group of people, taking the attention while your DPS members are aggressing at the same time. And knowing that if you go aggressive into this space, because of how tightly knit Shock is right now, they know, Soul knows, that if they push into this space, there's going to be no repercussions for going aggressive, really. There's going to be no one flanking at the same time and killing their backline. They have control of Ball, they've got to have control of Super, and Ons, their biggest threats. They have to worry about stuff like Striker, maybe. Actually, no, he died during this fight, so never mind. But there's nothing happening at the same time for San Francisco, so that Soul can execute this, like, these multi-threat engagements without anything being answered on the side of Shock. So really good identification and really good at, like, corralling to make that Farah work. Because, yeah, like I said, Shock just needs to be faster in order to really capitalize on the fact that they have a Farah. And they need to be really smart about the space they're taking, otherwise they're going to end up stagnating and taking a ton of splash damage from the Farah. Why do you think we haven't seen any Sombra Reaper yet? Hard to say without knowing the Scrim environment. Obviously it was very popular before the Grand Finals, so I would guess people have just realized that Reaper is such a limiting hero, very predictable hero, very short-range hero, very limited mobility hero. So yes, he's survivable, and he works in like a GOAT-style comp, but you can play around a GOAT-style comp by playing, I don't want to say like properly, but by playing more split, by playing more reactive, and by just respecting the amount of space that they are creating with Reaper being a character. Nice Transcendence there to counter that entire engagement. I'm really curious why Ana over Zen or vice versa. On Koth in general, Zen is like typically the greedier pick in these compositions. I'll call this very loosely a dive comp because it sort of plays in the same way that a dive comp plays. Obviously you don't have 6 members diving or anything like that, but the way you set up is generally very split. You're trying to force engagements on individual members by outnumbering them, either by forcing them out of position with something like a hook or a boop, or by capitalizing on their own aggression and isolating backline members, like I was talking about with ball play earlier. The way Zen works in a dive comp makes your aggression a lot more punishing, obviously with Discord orbs. But it also makes your defensive positioning and your slower play a lot more disadvantageous. So like I said, if they all get stuck in the same location there, you're not going to heal up. You're not going to heal up the spam with Zen. You would with an Ana potentially, but you're not going to have the healing output to survive being stuck in one location like that. And you're not going to have ultimates like Nano to really burst into engagements or out of those situations. So it's higher risk, higher reward. And with players as good as Violet, obviously the reward is generally there. But I'm curious why one Soul doesn't opt for a Zen and why Shock opted for an Ana on the last map. Ana makes a little bit more sense, similar to the Farah swapping to Tracer for retakes, just more resources, more healing to cover when you're crossing space. The Nano is a better retaking tool than Transcendence in most cases. But it's curious that, for example, Shock opened with Violet on Zen. I guess it's because he had Trance, but he didn't swap when they lost first fight. I think Bedosin comes in with some Zen later on. Makes sense. Maybe they only run. Maybe they run Ana on Koth just flat out because they like Nano Boost as a fight turner so much, or maybe because they run Pharah, they need more healing for the main team for not only Hog but for Ash and Ball as well. Creators better on Ana, they practice great a lot. Yeah. Do you think those reasons for no Sombra Reaper hold for the current patch now that Hog isn't as powerful? Is Reaper still too limiting? I think at the highest level, characters like Reaper, assuming they're well balanced, just limit your team composition too much. I would say the same about Hog if Hog wasn't so very, very strong in this patch. Running this character with limited mobility, limited effective range, limited resources to support their team, just limits what you can do as an entire team. Like, sure, you can be effective in a certain style, in a rush style, or in sometimes a dive style like we saw, but if those executions don't work out, and they need to be like super perfect for them to work out, it just becomes inconsistent to run, when you could be running things like a Tracer or a Sombra to ease dives, ease rushes into your favor. It's the same reason people like play Mei when she's really strong on certain maps, but you can't play Mei everywhere because she's so limiting to your team comp. I would say the same is true of Reaper when he's properly balanced. Or is it because they just want a nano gesture to do things? They were nanoing a gesture a ton. I think the biggest thing is Shock showed they're capable of burning down gesture on the Hog, so they're using nano as a defensive ult to sort of absorb that aggression, while everyone else on their team, the Ashe, the Pharah, or Tracer, and the Ball are doing something else. It's just creative and gesture surviving, and everyone else capitalizing on the aggression that Shock's putting out into gesture. I think that's part of the reason they run Zen, so they can burn down a Hog. But also, I'm sure Shock is well aware of that possibility for on a Hog and being able to absorb it, so they're probably doing more than just linear aggression into Hog now, like they were before. What do you think teams would be running if this was on current patch? I honestly have no idea. This current patch has felt like really, really even in terms of like the way meta play it. Like dive can work, rush can work, bunker comps can work, spam comps can work, double sniper can work. I would need to see like a scrim setting in order to really... Hold on 1 second. Okay, sorry. I would need to see a scrim setting and see how they play out at a higher level of play before really analyzing how these different comps work into each other. It's hard for me to really gauge how good some characters are, not being a pro player myself, not understanding the exact capabilities without seeing them firsthand. So I would need some time in a proper scrim setting to really gauge how good these different comps can be on different maps, against different teams and stuff like that. But I would guess a lot of teams would favor towards dive. I think dive feels really good right now, and dive at the highest level, when properly executed, can be extremely punishing. If not dive, then potentially standard comps, like the just standard hit scan comps, like with either Ashe Tracer, like we saw a bunch before, even potentially double sniper and stuff like that, with like either Winston Diva or Rhine potentially on some comps. It really would come down to map and team style and who they're facing in terms of opponents, really, because like I said, I think it's fairly even right now. And there's nothing that's like super broken in my eyes, at least that I've seen.
As well as those mines, they basically got everything but the Transcendence here.
The very first kill on a Gesture is enormous because Gesture does play the Roadhog in a very main tank kind of way. He is taking up space, he's making sure that his team has all the position that they need. You don't necessarily think of Roadhog like that, you think of him as a pick tank. Speaking of that...
So they even use Nano aggressively there. They say, okay, Gesture, we're going to Nano you, go for a hook. And he can play as aggressive as he wants, knowing he's going to get Nanoed, not going to die. No risk of getting antied. He even hooks the enemy Hog, and he just basically gets one shot with no discord, just thanks to Nano. I would like to think San Francisco know that's a real threat. The only other real Nano targets would be Prophet on the Tracer, if he's going for backline, which you typically don't want to do on a map like this. It's too open, too hard to set up.
This is going to be gesture
Yeah,
boosted.
2
That
shots.
means super
That's
fed,
crazy.
and here just comes the cleanup. Those long-range right clicks. In my opinion, it's one of the best feelings in the world to hit a perfect right
Well played by
click on
Gesture,
Roadhog
but
in
yeah,
perfect
that's
range,
so
gets the hook
silly.
to round it out. A nice
So
3K
much
from
damage.
Gesture. We know that Soul is probably just
Oh,
gonna run
nice
Gesture
kill.
on Roadhog all set.
Oh, Creative got turned into Jam. Not much left from him, unfortunately.
Creative
So that gets
got
away with
turned
murder.
into
Almost.
Jam.
The whole hog doing a whole bunch of work. However, beautiful sleep dart onto Gesture. He is antied as well. So
Why would he
he's gonna
walk
follow
out with
this up
no ammo?
damage.
Okay.
Striker finally finishes him off. And Super takes a breather. Beautiful hook too to cancel.
Look at how much
resurrection.
aggression
And he kills
Super's
Toby as
taking,
well.
and then still
Regards
gets
that
a
stay
kill.
for
He
a
not
while.
only denies the res, he gets the kill. So like, if you look at like a ball player in that situation, sure, they'd be able to boot the Mercy away, and they'd probably die for it just the same. But he actually gets the kill on the Mercy there. And it's just absurd what Hog can do as a main tank.
Still stalling. That was an extra what? 10-15% at this point, maybe a little bit more as well.
Yeah, Shock are just
onto Soul Dynasty.
so good.
99 as Soul Shock end up finding the flip.
Shock style has been like in general across like every meta has always looked to me like just a bunch of people who are just going to do everything they can to stay alive no matter what during these fights, and then out of nowhere they just become super coordinated and wipe you as a team during the mid fight. They're not often like going all in with these like hyper aggressive plays or setting up like big pre-fight stuff, but they're just living through whatever engage you throw at them and then coming back with coordination, because they're always like level-headed throughout the mid-fight. They're always going to be ready to coordinate and just close out these fights. Rather than open them themselves, they like wait for other teams to overstep. Nice nano. Yeah, again, it's not necessarily about like Super getting kills with that nano. Just the fact that he got hooked, got focused down by both tanks for like maybe 2 seconds even, which doesn't seem like a lot of time, but can be a lot of time in these fights. He lives through that, and now with that nano, he then becomes an even bigger threat, and the other tanks are forced not only to change focus, but like completely give up position because of the amount of time they spend focusing him, which is ridiculous for a main tank. Like, even if like a Reinhardt got hooked in and got nano like that, like sure, he's a big threat, but he's not as big of a threat as this Roadhog. Quick 2-0 from Shock. Like I said, like their first fight, funnily enough, like Shock's first fights look like their weakest fights. And granted, Soul's playing the comp they want with the Pharah and stuff like that. But the fact that Shock like regularly loses first fights on Koth, which typically is like a death sentence in the Overwatch League. Like if you lose first fight on Koth, like you sometimes just give up the map because of alt economies, because of how good teams are at holding. But Shock just like roll back up, find these opportunities that other teams don't find, and they survive these engages that other teams just wouldn't normally. It's like always winnable for Shock. It's crazy. And this composition like suits that so well, because every single individual can be the fight turner. And they're so good at like finding those opportunities individually that they're just always finding them as a team as well.
The Overwatch League is brought to you by
Alright.
Cheez-It Groups. Deep flavor, deep crunch. It's a mind crunch.
Takes time for Shock to download Soul. Maybe that's it too. Alright, next map.
On Hollywood.
Hollywood.
So Soul has done their home.
So it is loser's pick when it comes to maps after the first Koth. First Koth is random, I believe. And teams have a heads up of what that's going to be so they can practice it. But then it's loser's pick moving forward with the same pool as we've seen throughout the playoffs. So
homework on it, and obviously San Francisco is going to make some adjustments.
Soul's
because what they
pick
did
here.
last time was just a diva
again,
and
it
a
looks like they're
Winston,
picking
and
this
their
because they favor the
Winston's got
Pharah.
blown up
I can't think of another
So Soul,
hybrid
I mentioned
map
it
that
before,
favors
they
Pharah
like
very
to
well.
run
This isn't like an
probably
amazing
more than
Pharah map,
any
but you
other
can make it
team.
work,
That's what they're gonna
at least
fall
on first
on
point, probably not
defense.
so
We'll
much
see
on
what
second
San
point.
Francisco has to counteract that.
I guess you could say maybe
Don't know if
Nimbani,
we're gonna see Reinhardt,
but typically you
but
wouldn't
I
run
think if you're
Pharah
enjoying
on
opening,
defense
because
on
he can play
Nimbani.
Diva, if you get to second point, so you can take away some of that high ground, but he also has a fantastic Sigma in his pocket.
You're crushing my dreams, man.
So yeah, we're seeing less ball now. Obviously, this is no longer a Koth map. You can't just go around the entire map and get easy flanks. So it's going to be more important to set up your backline members, your Ana, your Ashe, your Widowmaker behind a sort of stable shield in your Sigma than it is going to be to find flank engages and coordinate flanks and find disruption on backline members, because it's going to be just so much harder to find flanks, especially on Hollywood first. Like, where do you even go that's not predictable?
Reinhardt, Mr. Melee man.
Double hit scan.
So we're seeing Widow, Ashe.
Problems here.
Oh my word. Yeah, you don't want to take a headshot.
I'm wondering if this is
No.
because they know they're going to run
Instantly blocking
Pharah.
off security as well with a shield, knowing that Arns could just peek through an insta-kill him. There's the grapple.
Because they know their front line's going to have a lot of time getting through this Pharah. Pharah and Roadhog, I should say, and Sigma.
That rock was beautiful.
Damn. That was a really nice rock from Choi, but it wasn't enough. That Pharah is so disruptive. So for Shock to take this, they need to be able to... So either they need to break through this choke here. That's an awful angle. They either need to break through this arch here by getting people maybe through second point or into this alleyway towards the Mega. They need to break through it, or they need to bait for a hard enough engage that they can safely set up their like Widow and Ashe on these angles and punish people that try to go aggressive. This Pharah is never going to get punished if they try to fight here. If they try to fight like in this zone, this Pharah is just never going to dip into hit scan sightlines. So it's really going to be up to Super and Choi to open things up on either the tank line or to get like a really lucky hook on someone flying above them. It's a very hard point to break. And again, I'd like to see something like a Sombra, because it at least makes them have to worry about that other threat. Right now, everything that Soul has to worry about is going to be coming from one angle, through one choke. And unless they can get members around, like their Hog. Yeah. So they're trying to burst through, they're trying to set Striker up. That's a nice kill on Prophet, but what are they going to do from here? Oh my god! What a hook. That had to be max range, right? So yeah, they've got the barrage out, which is something. But now they have to worry about Sig ult. They're going to have to worry about Nano Hog. They're going to have to worry about Bob soon. They're going into a Diva, so they're really trying to burst through. They're just going to absorb everything from the Hog, from the Pharah, with the Matrix, and try to get into this alleyway. Oh, not a great... Nice split peek there. So again, so this was sort of like both things that I was talking about at the same time. So they were trying to get through this alleyway by nullifying Gesture, by using the defense matrix to nullify Prophet's rockets. But then at the same time, because Creative is trying to step up and heal these members, Ons just gets a cheeky peek on an off angle that, because they're already committing to this fight here, that angle becomes safe for Ons to take, unless someone like Marvel or someone like Fitz was like also trying to go hyper aggressive. There's no reason for them to mark that angle. They're focusing heavily on this fight, and that creates an opening for Ons. It's sort of similar, like I was talking about, where like if they focus the Hog for too long, there's so many other threats coming out that even in this tight, limited space where like there's really only one angle, Ons still finds a nice little peek to take down Creative there.
Just like that, the point is really just opened
so yeah, Soul didn't fully commit to winning that fight immediately. If they wanted to commit to winning that fight immediately, they should have had nades coming in immediately, dynamites coming in immediately, and all inning before Ons even gets a chance to make that peak. But they were relying too heavily on Marvel's ult. And he only got one, I think he only got super when he was sleeping or something. I think that's what I saw. And that's not enough to find kills, and it's not even enough to follow up on because of how tanky Hog is and because of the other resources they had. So by the time they decided to commit and try to all in, Ons had that angle and took down Creative. Really nice play.
Especially against someone like a Hog. Striker's got Bob online too as Prophet ends up falling down. At least they managed to kill off Violet, but the Bob is going to do a fair bit of work to the NEB Bob in this situation. But with Shock just being on the point here, it's already up to Seoul Dynasty to try and recontest. Creative's in the side, he's low health, has to go to the mini.
Nice trades from Fitz, but at this point, Shock's opened up the point, and we know how hard they are to disrupt.
They don't get the kill off of it, but then it forces people out of position, it forces the shields on, it forces the flux, and then they get a kill onto Creative, which is a bulk of their healing. It means that Toby has to heal everybody, not just Prophet, and San Francisco was able to crack it off of that.
Yeah, Creative going down there means they can no longer sustain that fight, so they need to either make a snap decision to try and instantly win it, or try and like stabilize and take a slow fight while they wait for like the next round. Is this when he kills?
Doing what he does best, and
oh my god.
He didn't even see Creative for like half a second, and he was able to instantly kill him. This is why you should fear Arns, always on the Widowmaker.
That was crazy.
On the hit scan. And a place like this too, insta-killing Toby as well. So Dynasty now completely on the back foot.
It's the most important target, absolutely. Super's in a lot of trouble, though. Prophet's able to take him down. They're going to be able to get this res.
They're going to go for the flux. They actually managed to find 2 and a nice little hook onto the high ground. But Super,
Super doesn't care.
Premium shipping on getting to the high ground there. Didn't even need to take the elevator.
So now we're seeing the double sniper.
He does get slept, but look at all the space that they're able to create, and Marvel's going to go down as well. The Seoul Dynasty are just gifting the San Francisco Shock the high ground.
Seems like
This is
Fitz
exactly where they want to be.
wanted to
With this
go
double
Widow
sniper.
instead of Ashe
Super has
to
a
sort of
Reinhardt
try and
player who's
match
used to not being
Ons.
able to
Also
play
for the
game,
second
so
point,
he's
obviously the
getting
range
stunned and
favors
slapped
Widow.
and hacked and everything, but he's used to it. He's got the mental
And then
fortitude
Prophet
to go
opts
through
for
it. He just got
Hanzo
slept
instead of
again,
Ashe.
and then woken up. San Francisco is
Hanzo obviously has a
great
ton
deal
of threat.
push, and more importantly,
He's got
San
one-shot
Francisco has
potential,
the
he's
high
got
ground
dueling
with both
potential, he's got
Ashe
really good
and
mobility. But he does not offer the consistency that Ashe offers, I don't think.
I mean,
Both from range and with the one-shot potential, with the bursted Mercy shot, boosted Mercy shot. God, Moth just untouchable.
Super does get anti-naded as well, but is going to be able to heal himself up. Marvel taking a little bit of a nap also. Bob is going to come out on the point for the shock, and there you go. There's the kill. Moth, Bob,
So like, even though like,
Valkyrie
here, let me go back just a second.
on the point up. Marvel taking a
Even though, like, I mentioned before, like if you spend too much time trying to kill Super, you're gonna open yourself up to other angles. Even though these tanks aren't like actively pushing or anything, the fact that they can't both mark Super's threat and Hanzo's threat and Striker's threat coming around the flank just now just means like Seoul is going to be constantly on the back foot. They're forcing themselves into this small position. It's limiting what Prophet can do. It's limiting what Fitz can do. I'm not even sure where Fitz is exactly right now. But unless they decide to make a move and change the playing field, they're not going to be able to retake or even hold this space. So like they're stuck in this decision where they're like, okay, if we try to pick off Super, then we're going to open ourselves up to Ons and to Striker's sightlines. So maybe we shouldn't push them. Okay, but if we try to push another space, then Super is going to take even more space and push into the payload and force us into an even smaller ground. Okay, well Ons is too far to duel right now. We can't even set up our own Widow in a safe position that can safely duel Ons. We can't move Prophet anywhere aggressively because he risks a duel with Striker, who's pocketed by a Mercy. And covering any other location would just take way too much time. So like, what did Gesture and Marvel do from this position? And I think this highlights how limiting having a Hog can be, because if you had a Winston in this situation, you could just split your tanks, have Winston hunt down one of the DPS. But given that you're running this tank line, I think you do still need to split your tanks so that Gesture's threatening some other space while Marvel's sort of holding ground and denying value from these two trying to push in. But if they're not actively moving aggressively and taking space, then they're just doing nothing. And we're no longer on first point, so Shock aren't forced to just run it down main like they were before. Shock are able to take all these different angles that we're seeing right here, and it's just forcing Seoul into this really uncomfortable position. And as we see, the longer they spend over here, Striker comes out, just gets a nice pick, gets himself out, almost gets himself out, I should say. But by that time, it's too late. They found an advantage. Super's moving in, and all their threats are collapsing at once.
This should just be the second point. However, just having that high ground
Yeah, that's insane.
so important. I mean, yes, Fitz is
Striker swapping onto Tracer now. Is this just for closer to get to close spawn, or is this
pushing up on that space that you're creating and stopping people like Moth from getting the res? There's not much
by
you can
Gesture?
do if you
Okay, he goes
just go
to
the Widow.
Hanzo now.
I mean, it's not just about that for Ons. Ons is a great duelist
So-
when the Widows come, but one of the great things about Ons' gameplay
I'm
is
not
he will
entirely
target
sure what the
tanks,
thinking
and he will
between
hit
Widow
headshots on
Hanzo,
tanks
Widow
like
Ashe,
Zarya
Ashe
or
Hanzo
Roadhog
is
in this instance
for these
as
top
well,
teams.
and that forces out
I'm
resources.
guessing because of how important these high grounds can be and how important it is to go both up and down off of these high grounds, Hanzo's more favored, but also because Hanzo straight up has more front-facing damage. Like Dynamite does a ton of damage, and like Ashe has really consistent headshot potential, but Hanzo just pumping damage forward will burn down tanks and burn down shields faster than Ashe will. So it's possible that this is because not only because of these high grounds they need to cover, like the space. Wow, that was really bad. This space here and like the balcony over here, and then obviously the high ground that peaks over the end of the point. It's not importantly for those, but also for this like really strong main alleyway and being able to pair like Striker with Choi and be able to push out someone like Marvel, be able to push out someone like Gesture.
You're not getting the kill, but you're forcing them to use resources, whether it be a breeder.
But yeah, you see how aggressive Shock's being? Like, you need to be this aggressive to make this comp work. And then the counter nano.
The dragons are going to come out as well from the Seoul Dynasty. That's
I have no idea what's happening. Oh my god, he gets 3.
Nice little hook onto the
Nice hook on the Moth.
Goodbye, Moth.
Okay. So, it was good that Shock was trying to go aggressive there, but this time Seoul had the opportunity to turn it with, I think they used dragons at the beginning of that fight, and then also with, what was it exactly that they used to survive that? Because it was Shock that nanoed. It was just really good hooks, I guess. So yeah, again, Shock trying to set up these flank angles. Having Hanzo with this flank is extremely punishing. Like I said, can do a ton of damage straight up to tanks, just forward facing. Oh, and then they just completely swap it up. So that was actually really smart from Shock. Looks like they're about to lose this fight, but still. So they had like 5 members pushing up here, and obviously Marvel sees this, and he's probably looking for an ult play. So instead of hard committing into this area, into this choke, pushing themselves through like 1-2 choke points, pushing them through these tight corridors, they instead opt to use their information where they have Gesture here alone to try and drop and immediately burn him down before Seoul can make their counter aggressive play. So this is like Shock's version of aggressive rush, where they're not just all-inning very linearly and very predictably. They're calling off plans and changing momentum and forcing the enemy team to react to them. And they're going to use however they react to them. Usually, usually Gesture will be burned down immediately and not able to react on time. That'll create an opening for them, even though they've given up a lot of ground. And then they use however the remaining members to react on their own positioning. But obviously they weren't planning on dying to the immediate flux. So really well played by Marvel to be really heads up about that play and counter it fast enough before Shock finds anything of value.
This double sniper in a very small, narrow alleyway is rather deadly, and Prophet and Fitz just really putting Shock through the ringer.
Well, Shock have a couple of ultimates to try to work with here, but they're not the best ultimates to try to crack open up points, rather. Violet can nano super, and it's going to buy you a lot of space, but the thing is, Seoul Dynasty is playing a composition where they're going to just run a crossfire. Where are you going to really find value? Everyone is so far away.
Odds must have had that grapple hook. Must have an idea where Fitz is. Well, Super just
very hard to walk through these jokes. Again, no shields, no real resources from these heroes that can just burst through choke points or anything. You've got nano, but again, using nano aggressively, unless you can guarantee a hook when you nano super or something like that, it becomes a very predictable play. Okay, well, I'm guessing they've got some sort of comm structure where Super's just yelling like, I'm hooking, and then like he knows he's gonna hit the hook, so the nano comes through ready. Yeah, and now you're seeing Seoul panic because they need to touch the point, not necessarily because they got the initial kill, even though they did get the initial kill. Looks like it might be enough, though. Seoul doing a really good job. Their defense has looked really, really good. Like, on first point we saw their fire play look really good. Here we're seeing their double sniper play look really good. The way they're splitting and the way they're handling individual members going down, like they're not panicking, which you'll see a lot of lower level teams do. They're not overreacting and giving up space. Like they're not acting based on consequence. Like when Gesture goes down, for example, Marvel's not just instantly giving up space. He's looking to make a play of his own and capitalizing on the fact that Shock just spent like 5 or 6 people focusing one target to his advantage. Same goes for Prophet, same goes for Fitz. Probably same goes for Creative. I haven't been watching him too much, but they're looking for their own opportunities to capitalize on the fact that San Francisco's making an aggressive play. And this is what you see San Francisco doing a lot of the time, like we saw in Koth, where if Gesture and Marvel are going aggressive somewhere, they're finding ways around that. And it's the same thing here. It's just Shock looks a little more all-in on their initial plays. Like, for example, that turn onto Gesture, that drop onto Gesture that we saw. But Seoul is doing like a really good job of not panicking, not overreacting, and not giving up space when they've already like given a small advantage. They're not turning it into a big advantage by just misplaying. Oh, but now they can't come back from this one. Oh, Moth! Get him, Moth! Oh, not that it really matters, but...
just decimate the Seoul Dynasty's front line. They complete. They don't complete with time hex, but they at least...
So like if
complete
Shock
on
ever finds a
A little bit
chance
of
to take those
anti-synergy
advantages,
there
like get the
towards
kill
end
on
as the
Gesture
whole
first,
hog
for
was
example,
coming out for the Seoul
without
Dynasty,
giving
then
up
all his
anything,
targets got
without
lifted into the
getting
air,
traded
and
out by
saved away
Sigma
from
without
that
being
whole hog.
barraged, like we
Jester
saw in
had the
first point.
back
If they're
foot
ever
forward,
able to
which is
get
what you
that
want from a
first
whole hog, a couple of stacks
initial
of creeps
advantage
there,
and then
but got
stabilize,
some kills.
they will just roll
At the end
over
of the
you.
day, the combination of those
They've
two
got, like I said,
ultimates
they've got
does not
such like
find
clutch
any
potential
fixes.
mid
Cisco
fight,
able to open it up.
and that
It
any
was
chance
really
they
that I
get
mentioned, like,
to
using the
turn a
dragon
fight,
to
they
try to
will
open
instantly
things up.
like step on the
He used it
gas
left
and take
side.
it.
There's not a lot of high ground
They're
to take,
super
but it is a
fast
small high ground,
and super
there's
punishing.
a lot of architecture on that left side you can hide behind, so Striker uses the Dragon Strike to get in there, and then he's in good position to follow up with arrows. San Francisco does finish. Like I said, last time they were on this map, they didn't even take point one, so you have to be happy with that if you're a Shock fan.
Absolutely, and yeah, I mean, Hollywood, I think so-so on third point. I don't finish it. I feel like I never finish Hollywood.
It's
And I
tough.
think it's just my selective memory.
So opting
It's
for
not like
double
a
sniper here
Rialto, for
instead of something like a
example, or
Pharah, instead of something like an Ashe.
a
I think I'd like to
Hermana,
see
for example,
Ashe.
like, which are extraordinary
Probably Ashe
tough
Hanzo
maps.
if you're gonna run
So
anything here,
without
and then swapping Ashe into Widow, but maybe Ons doesn't like playing Ashe, and they just rather play the Widow. Ashe Hanzo would give you a somewhat similar setup to the Pharah, where you can use dynamites instead of rockets, and then just Hanzo's burst damage to burn down tanks, and really hard punish people coming to these chokes. I think with these double snipers, you run the risk of not being able to hard commit, but given how aggressive we've seen Super and Choi play, it probably won't be too much of an issue for them. Also with Violet on Zen instead of Ana, gives them that extra
He's
damage.
completely switched off as well, Hex, mind you, from the Pharah. He knows that. Well, Shock running double
So yeah, they're not even running
themselves,
Pharah on
so they
offense
get
here.
Much success with it. I was extremely excited to see Prophet play some more of that Pharah, but against a team like the Shock,
Again,
it seems
very
like
hard to
more of a-
take spaces Pharah. Very easy to hold predictable chokes with it. What's the biggest synergy within the comp? Within like Shock's comp right now? It's not really like individual members pairing off. It's not like these two people play together, these two people play together, anything like that. It's just that there's so many threats that you want to split them up so that it forces the enemy team to react to multiple angles, multiple heroes, multiple threats, multiple cooldowns, whatever it is, all at the same time. Like you can't block Hook and Widow and Hanzo and the Rock all at the same time, and the 5 orbs from Zen. You can't block all of those at the same time. So you're kind of just like trying to spend as little amount of time in the open as possible and trying to set up your own split setups if you're Soul in this case. So it's not like any 2 heroes or any 3 heroes synergize super well together. Like you could say like Mercy pocketing Ashe is really good. Mercy pocketing Hanzo and Widow are really good. You can say shielding to counter hook targets. So like playing Choi with super in case he gets hooked is really good. Or running Ana so in case someone gets hooked is really good. Like it's like all these things are good, but it's all about going aggressive and finding your aggressive opportunities. So there's no set plays with this comp necessarily, or like strong setup positions. It's all about advantages and finding opportunities to go aggressive based on your position, based on your cooldowns, based on enemy position, based on their cooldowns. Every single member kind of has the same job, other than like Choi and Moth. Ons, Striker, Super, and Violet are all trying to kill something. And Super is the tankiest member of them all, and he's trying to take a lot of attention, but at the same time, he's only trying to take attention when he can be an active threat and he can try and kill somebody. So he's not just like standing there taking free shots. Like you won't see Super just standing in front of the team like you would like a Reinhardt to set up longer engage times for Ons or Striker. He's only peeking and he's only moving out at times when he knows the rest of his team can do the same thing. So it's like these 4 members, I would include Violet in this as well. If he was Ana, I would say Ana somewhat similar. They're all trying to do the somewhat of the same thing, which is just take the best fight possible and do as much damage as possible most of the time. It's not like a strongly synergized thing, but it does require really strong team play to coordinate those timings and make sure you're not overstepping as an individual. Make sure you're not being the first one to peak if you're someone squishy like Ons or Striker, and so that you can be punished. It just takes a really strong amount of sense about the game and about your team to know when those opportunities are presenting themselves and to capitalize on them fast enough before they pass you by.
Architecture rather than trying to crack through a point with a Pharah.
Oof.
That was close. Our resurrections on both sides.
So yeah, I wouldn't say there's like any individual level synergy between members, but like team-wide, there's a ton of synergy in timing.
Surely the Soul
And that's not because of the characters themselves, it's just the way the comp plays. The characters aren't really doing anything for each other, other than just being a threat.
You know what? Didn't alert him to the nearby enemies.
So this is sort of what I was saying, something Shock would have needed to do, which is just bypass the choke. A lot easier for Soul to bypass the choke when there's no Pharah barraging down on them. But Shock handling this well. They know that one of the threats just went down, so they need to play slower. They need to take their time getting back into this point. They're not trying to instantly turn anything. They're looking and they're waiting for their turn to come back out. God, Violet, how is he alive? And they're really just turning this back, because I think Soul, it's hard to say exactly from this POV, but it looked like Soul got that initial pick off, and they thought, okay, we've got space now, we can move up. But just by moving up without coordinating, without strong coordination about location where they're going, without coordination on a specific target, or a specific set location they want to set up for their backline, they got picked off one by one because Shock had those plans to come back into the fight.
Well, I mean, Fleta actually got 2 kills against this Soul Dynasty team that swung a point for him, so maybe...
But yeah, Shock are just so good at both the mid-fight and at turning those like losing engages.
Well, you know exactly
it's like this crazy feeling whenever you're playing Shock, where it's just like they're just so good and they're never out of a fight. They know how to handle like almost every situation, and it's not just like individuals know how to handle it. It's like every single member is going to be doing something. I don't know if that's based on their communication, like they've got insane shot calling and like play-by-play calling, or it's just like their structure and the way they prioritize things is just so well-rounded and so like in-depth that they're just ready for everything. Because it really looks like they're ready for everything. Most of the times we've seen them lose fights is when they're struggling to find an offensive advantage against another team that again is giving up no advantages, or they're just getting outplayed by ultimates. But like when you're playing into a defensive Shock, trying to force them to make a mistake, or trying to capitalize on a mistake too aggressively is just going to make you pay. I think this map's a great example of that.
Can this get rezzed is the question. You would need Ons into this fight.
Oh my goodness, he does manage to get it in time, just in range. There's the Valk. Does finally need the Transcendence? I don't think he does. No, not.
See, look at that. Even though Soul got the first pick, they were following up with an ult play. They were trying to go too aggressively, too fast. Realistically, no one could follow up that Flux. It didn't even force Violet to trance right away. Ooh, almost tons. And then Shock just turned it. Shock stabilized and they turn every single fight.
20 seconds does remain, and there's the kills opening for the Soul Dynasty now. However, Moth once again on the res onto Striker.
They bring it back. Striker's only a couple arrows away from getting a Dragon Strike too. A little pressure on the point from Marble.
Oh, Prophet! So sure, you can't be ready for everything. There's always going to be plays like Prophet just tried to make that'll catch you off guard if you're someone on Shock, but the fact that they just handled so much aggression, and they were at ult disadvantage a lot of these fights, or they were down a member a lot of these fights, and still Soul couldn't close it out. Yeah. Too much focus on the payload, the DPS pop off from Shock. Too much focus on the tanks, DPS pop off from Shock. Too much focus on setups, Smurf and Super walk into your team. Not Smurf, not Choi in this case. Smurf was playing ball. But yeah, it's just Shock's not making mistakes, which is insane in a game like Overwatch. Like the amount of synergy that's required to play at that level.
Shot after shot, stat line ends up with 16 eliminations, 10 final blows, 35%.
Now, if you guys know the scoreline from this match, then you know that this is far from over. So let's move forward past crunch time.
Onto Toby several times, and without your mercy in that composition on this map, they were able to stomp Justice.
Oh, Hex is still talking.
They beat Philadelphia Fusion on this.
Skip forward a bit. Okay.
Striker right now is on the Hanzo, which makes sense on the defense.
Same comp on defense here. Again, I actually think this comp is... I've been thinking about this comp a lot since I first started watching it. I'm from Washington, obviously. Not this exact comp, but similar, like, hog stuff. And I think it's actually a lot stronger on dive maps with, like, long sight lines, high grounds. and stuff like that, because the defending team
Just being scared of Violet is
can just completely deny
It's a good
take
idea to be
pressure
scared of Violet.
from the offense. They can just completely match the enemy tanks without threat of dying. Without really the threat of dying. You gotta get up for school? Alright. Thanks for tuning in, man. Have a good one. So like, even if Soul was running like a full dive and they were trying to coordinate dives onto Ons and Striker, Smurf could just walk at wherever Jester's trying to go on Winston or Marvel's trying to go on Diva and just like threaten to hook and kill them, like at any stage during the map. And the fact that you can just have that much threat just by existing.
because of the nature of the map as well.
Oh, interesting. We got
Shot could
Smurf.
basically permanently keep it.
Was Smurf on Hog last map? Am I crazy? No, it was Super. I wonder why. Oops. I wonder why they swapped out Smurf. Maybe they probably went ball on attack. That's got to be it. They run ball hog or ball sig on attack. Because again, you need something to get through a choke. Ball can't do much individually, but he can at least be behind you and threaten backline disruption as an individual.
Almost 1-for-1 here, apart from the Ana and the Zen.
So much of this is just going to be about the duel between the Widows and
They
the
did
duel
do a ball
between
count?
the
Okay.
Hanzos as well. Jester
Yeah,
is
so, like,
gonna have to back off. San Francisco is going to allow.
How can I describe this? Hog on defense, super good because you can just match enemy tanks and just deny space for them, or in Smurf's case here, he's just flanking. He's kind of playing like a Winston would on a dive defense, where he's trying to deny flank routes and deny setups for the enemy snipers. I would probably rather see him not doing this and letting Striker and Ons use Sonics to mark enemy flankers, because the only flankers are snipers. And given the long sightlines here, I think it'd be very hard for Smurf to be able to keep up if someone decides to wall climb or grapple up somewhere. Yeah, I don't think Smurf's actually done anything so far this defense.
This is Moth now just dueling out with the Mercies. He's got a little bit of backup as well.
I think he's playing too much like a Winston and not enough like, I don't even know what else to call him, like an off tank, I guess. Yeah. Smurf throwing SMH. I think he had a really good opportunity to just burn Fitz there, but he didn't walk up to him. Even though, like, so like when Fitz was pushing through that corridor, through that mini room pack, the rest of his team were like either up here or on second point. I couldn't tell exactly, but they were setting up to go up to this high ground behind through the mega or just drop on the point. That's where they were looking to threaten mega pack and this high ground. That the amount of distance they would have to cross to punish Smurf, like to if say like let's say they're up in this window. Even if they haven't fully committed to pushing through here, let me clear out this drawing. Like, let's say the rest of the attackers from Soul are here. Most notably, their Hog player, their most instantly punishing player, are up here with the intention of pushing to here. The amount of time it would take for them to call off that play and turn on Smurf, which is, I think, what he fell back for, like he was afraid of them turning on him, would take so long that there's no way he doesn't get the kill on Fitz. And by that time, if they decide to completely give up this space and cross the map like this, you have tons of opportunities for Ons and Striker to pick people off during this aggression, assuming they take the shortest route possible. And if they don't take the shortest route possible, like they play more defensive, then it's just more time for Smurf to get away with it. At the very least, he needed to force Fitz back so that Fitz could not be going aggressive at the same time that this push is happening. But because he gave out that space, Fitz was able to take this angle across point, take an even deeper angle as we saw from behind like the second mini pack. And yeah, it was just, he's like a huge threatening body, but he didn't actually actively threaten anything. Maybe Smurf missed a call or something, kind of weird. Yeah, it seemed it seemed very deliberate that he was pushing out that way because he knew the enemy team was rotating on that high ground, but then he just stopped as soon as he saw Fitz, which I don't understand. If anything, during that time, they should have called for like Striker or Ons to just cover him if he felt he needed help, and then push with backup into Fitz, because they need to retake space at the same time. Like I said, if this comp gets corralled into a smaller area, and they just don't have tools to break themselves out, then they're just going to end up floundering. Like we saw on Hollywood defense second point, what happened to Soul when they got surrounded by the double hit scan. They couldn't push into the enemy tank line, they couldn't push out individual DPS because they missed their opportunities.
Just going to open the fight up. There's the Transcendence actually keeping people alive. Not
Wow,
quite
Smurf gets knocked off.
Though Smurf gets pushed off the edge. There is a small gap in the back right-hand corner there. If you're not careful, it doesn't get pushed over.
I mean, already, if you're Soul, I'd be pretty happy with this take so far. They're going to try and win it out. Oh my god. Very uncharacteristic of Shock to play so slowly there. I really think this is down to Smurf just not finding enough threat. Like, why was he playing with the team there to the point where he was getting whole hog off the map at the same time that Transcendence was covering his team? There's no reason for him to be absorbing that pressure when they have Transcendence to absorb it anyway, and he should be looking for individual threats on somewhere else on the map. Like, it should have been just Zen and one of the DPS on that corner because they're trying to threaten from that angle, sure. But there's no reason for Smurf to be there as the hog.
San Francisco was never able to get in a position. The Transcendence came out early, but
they're just playing uncharacteristically slow, and they're not. Maybe it's just because Smurf
San Francisco
was just uncomfortable on the hog on this map. I'm not sure. He was just missing opportunities. It really just came down to 2 fights, and both of which I think it was because Smurf wasn't exerting enough pressure. Which is crazy, because Smurf's an insane player, and his game sense, like, on Winston, obviously, like, finding those opportunities to go aggressive has been, like, one of his strong suits. And like I said, Shock is a team that is just so good at capitalizing on opportunities and not giving up opportunities themselves. So that just looked really uncharacteristic of them to me. Don't know why I'm not fast forwarding. Alright, so yeah, we're on ball. I'd be surprised to see D.Va. But no, never mind, D.Va's fine. They're against Pharah, that's why. I was like, why D.Va? But then I remembered Prophet's been playing Pharah all game, all match. So again, similar game plan from Seoul here. San Francisco is handling this a lot differently than Hollywood, for example, because Ball is viable here. Ball has a lot of routes getting both around the point and then hitting problem areas, hitting these choke points, hitting the high ground, hitting even inside the mega room. You can like swing and like boot people through the mega room, or force people into the mega room and then collapse on them when they come out, stuff like that. Ball just finds a ton more value here than he does on Hollywood. There's more opportunities for him to be relevant. So San Francisco asking for more of a dive comp here, more of this sort of half dive that we've been sort of seeing, beginning a while ago with like Ash Tracer. Here we've got Widow Tracer. It's going to be harder for Widow to get through this choke, but if all Prophet does is mark the choke and try to control the Widow and the Zen, it's going to be hard for them to control everyone else going aggressive, potentially onto Fitz and maybe Bedos and other members of their backline. It's going to be up to mostly Gesture and Marvel, I would say, to contain this dive group. But at the same time, they're going to be a lot less mobile, and it's going to be a lot easier for Shock to find aggressive opportunities because of their mobility. It's just a matter of not getting picked off before they find that chance. I love for SF to control where Soul fights a lot more. Yeah, so like we saw it a lot on Hollywood on Shock's attack, after first point at least, where they were just corralling Soul into these like smaller areas and then just completely dominating the map. They know like as soon as they have control, they don't need to play super aggressively with their tanks. And I think that the time they take in between fights to set up, namely Ons and Striker, honestly, has been extremely beneficial to them. And I imagine something similar is going to happen here where they force people off the choke, they set up Ons somewhere deep, and then they set up a dive with Striker and Smurf at the same time that Ons is trying to peek someone like Prophet or Fitz.
I do love a Striker on the Tracer.
But yeah, this Pharah is not going to be able to do much. Even D.Va can be an individual threat versus this Pharah and be enough to get through the choke. Where? Okay, Ons got in. Smurf is in. I said typically in this matchup, Smurf as the ball player will be more, wow, nice sleep, will be more reactive and sort of looking to capitalize on enemy teams, individuals being out of position. But this is no longer a Koth map. You can no longer just constantly rotate around the map. You are forced to fight in generally one direction. So he's going to have to look for more opportunities to open up the fight, because otherwise he's going to be caught away from his team, where his team are not able to catch up to him. And the enemy team is just going to have much better cutting opportunities. Fitz swapping off of Widow, or he was on Ashe, sorry. Fitz swapping off of Ashe onto Sombra now.
Prophet's movement is just
This is going to mean a lot more
There-
space
there's
for
so many
Striker,
times
but a
where
lot
you
less,
know the
a
far
lot
on
more
the other
threat
side of the
on
map, and you don't
Smurf.
expect them to come over. The fact that he even checked small
Oof.
pack room for Striker early on, and then was able to rotate, then he goes into the room. Like, are you kidding me? You don't see Faraz do this.
Prophet seems to have the best sense of when you need to actually like hard commit to pushes because he knows Shock's setting up something else across the map, so he's calling for his team to go hyper aggressive. Even though he's playing someone with Pharah, like Hex just said, is not typically the most aggressive type of DPS we've ever seen. He seems to be the one, not necessarily making the calls, but the one following up on those aggressive calls. Damn, Fitz didn't have his translocator up?
It's not on Bulldozer, but it's the next best thing. Flux is going to send people sky high, and Gesture ends up going down after he's antied, and with that nano on Choi, you got to be careful now if you're Prophet. The barrage comes out and ends
There should be plenty of space for Shock, given the spawns.
Going to be able to just get on the point and pressure it
Yeah.
out. With Toby, yeah, he's in no man's land, basically on the other side of the map. He's not going to last long against the brute
Ooh,
force that is the
he almost
Shock
landed that
Barrage.
actually.
Goodbye,
Damn,
Prophet.
Violet.
Arns managed to grapple away from him in the end. They are going to cap point number 1. However, they're running into an EMP now.
Yeah, Fitz should be able to get there too, but too often.
Is Moth going to keep Lucio, or is he just swapping to get the... Okay. Okay, we're going into Ashe now. Obviously, Widow Sightline's a lot more limited, and having the ability to throw dynamites and bombs on point can be a lot more beneficial than having Widow one-shot potential here.
I'm just looking for
Plus, the range is just Ashe one-shot potential anyway, so you're not really losing much by swapping onto Ashe here.
And the Ana like to sit on this back bridge, and if he can get over there on the side.
Oh, that seemed like a very reactive EMP. Are they going to be able to kill anything? Okay, they kill Smurf.
No, he is not. Toby actually finds
I was worried that like he just kind of panic EMP'd that, but they were able to capitalize.
Goodbye. Goodbye, Choi. And that will be a reset. However, I mean, Fitz, that was perfect.
Okay,
right?
he's
He
swapping
just
off.
EMP, then switched
So he
to
knows
Enzo. He's
Ball's not
already
going to be
got
as
an
active of a
extra
threat.
in the bank as well, so looking
They
good
don't
for
need...
Bulldogs.
Oh my god.
Defense pulse bomb.
They really use Pulse Bomb for
Maybe
that?
looks so great now. Smurf being dragged in and whole hogs is
I think with him being
nanoed.
booped in, I
Sure he
guess
stays
they were worried
alive,
about him
but
getting
their
nanoed.
gesture is equally as nanoed. It's just a trade of nanos to make sure the tanks can stay up.
Ooh, that hook's big.
Onto Choi,
Okay,
gets
the bomb.
self-destruct to get the remake. However, Arn's going down, and Gesture
Wait,
taking
Gesture
the
gets the
high
high
ground.
ground.
The velocity there
That was
from
cute.
the bomb in order to scale heights. Not something you think a hog could do, but Gesture's hog definitely can. Smurf ends up falling. Violet as well. Nice solid
Yeah,
defense from
Shock
the
really
Soul
struggle
from the
the
Dynasty
most
so far.
in situations like this where they need to get aggressive, they need to push in predictable ways, all planned. Yeah, that was interesting. But yeah, the fact that Shock is struggling so much to get through these points, granted it's like every team struggles to get through these points, but this is like what Shock's one weakness is they don't have like the strong ult combos, the strong ability to take attention in other ways by individuals. Like their Tracer player Striker wasn't doing a lot to open up fights. Obviously Ball struggles a lot on this point in the map anyway, but they weren't able to find openings that other more dive-centric teams sometimes are. They're more reliant on being able to use space that they're given than they are at actually finding that space for themselves. It seems like their game plan in a lot of these situations is try to bait aggression by like they're trying to make it look like they're going for an aggressive play so that they bait members of Soul to overcommitting to counter it, and then they in turn sort of like flip the table and can actually turn the fight in their own way.
They haven't really made any room here at all, Hex. It's just refusing to move. In fact, hooking Choi in and just
it's not working when people end up dying during the sort of bait phase.
And they are struggling even just getting through these doors against Gesture.
Well, I do like that Soul is not letting them come in and waiting for it, right? They're
Bit
fighting
aggressive
right in the
Prophet. I'm not
gates.
sure what he was doing there.
Down is a little rough, but I think Toby might have a res. Maybe he holds
That,
it here because there's
no, there's no way he gets rest where he died.
Oh, beautiful hook.
Yeah, and now Gesture was trying to make up for Prophet going down by getting a lot of aggro on himself, but he ends up dying. And this is where Shock wins the game. Or the point, I should say. Okay, maybe not. Fitz and Prophet making aggressive plays of their own. This is exactly what you'd expect Shock to do in these situations. You see like these individual playmakers, they know that all this aggression has already won them space on point, so they're not even trying to counter that forward aggression. They're going behind and trying to turn the fight by getting priority picks on Moth and Violet or Ons and Striker. They're just trying to do everything they can to ignore the front line and get around, which it seems like an obvious answer. But when you're in the moment and you're trying to react as individuals to all these things happening around you, and you have like the faith in your team to just ignore the objective and ignore the enemy front line to go aggressive like this, shows a lot of confidence in their play and a lot of really good just team play in general. Like they're individuals playing for the team, which is really good to see. And yeah, obviously Prophet popping off and Fitz popping off there.
Still on the chase, though, trying to get
And they haven't even gotten a tick.
Be a little bit careful, but
So yeah, that to me looked like a shock re-engage from Soul there.
this is their last push. Oh my god.
I'm not sure if it looked as deliberate as Shock usually does, but the fact that they started as a disadvantage, Soul did. They lost a couple members. They were giving up space. They let Shock onto the point, and since Shock basically only focused on taking pressure onto the point and not of thinking like spreading out around the map, because one, they didn't have necessarily the time or the space to do that because they had already committed to moving forward. They already used their cooldowns, used their abilities, used their health pools to commit forward. They're not able to readily answer Prophet and Fitz on those flanks. And it paid off for Dynasty. Of course, when you do that, when you play that sort of style, you run the risk of one, not being fast enough to capitalize and just giving up the point. So that's why it takes like a really high-level game sense to really know when doing that is the right play and when contesting the point itself is the right play, or when backing up your team, focusing and trying to fight back into them is the right play.
Very unlikely.
You cap fully if everybody just leaves the point.
They got a lot of ults to work with that Soul does not, so it's very possible they get some progress here, but even if they full cap, it's going to be in overtime, and it's going to be a draw or die. That's a nice pick to open things up.
Nano, maybe Nano Smurf and push people off the point.
Just dead two kills.
Yeah, I bet they do cap this, especially with both tanks going down. Yeah. Soul doesn't even care though, I don't think. They got 4 minutes to cap first point, and they pretty much steamrolled them first time around. Obviously, it's more stressful, knowing you're limiting yourself to a potential draw. Actually. Okay. Smurf going down, I think, means they can't finish anymore. There's no one that can actually be on the point. Wow, nice turnaround from Soul. I thought Shock had that for sure, but again, I think it's a symptom of the same thing where they won the fight towards the point, but they didn't follow through. Man, that's actually kind of sick, the stage. I wasn't paying attention to the stage at all, but the animations they do and stuff like that.
Francisco is dealt by the Soul Dynasty. No sweeps today in our first match of the Overwatch League 2020 Grand Finals weekend.
I don't know why, but I expected them to like show like some sort of video feed of them behind virtual computers, like on the stage itself. There'd be like little monitors set up and like little PCs and mice, and then like behind them would be the player's face. But this is much better.
But Soul just ended up with a lot of superior play. I think that their Ana play was a little bit better.
That was
all right.
A little bit ridiculous. Soul aren't out of the series just yet.
It's kind of comfortable on running defense.
I love this end
all right.
too. I mean, just anything that's
so more of the same. There's no way Bedosen plays Brig. Unfortunately, Brig is dead. More double sniper. I'm a little bit surprised Shock isn't opting for a close hold here. But the problem with trying to go for a close hold to like punish these spawn doors is you kind of need to run either characters like Mei or Reaper or McCree or Reinhardt, Diva, Lucio, and that's just not what they want to play. The only reason I say I'm a bit surprised is because they had a lot of success when they ran it earlier in the playoffs versus like Atlanta. They kind of just mirrored what Atlanta was doing. But obviously they want to play this comp, and they do not want to swap 5 heroes to get to this comp. So they're just going to focus on what teams are calling like the one fight. When you're playing, what's this map called? Havana. There's typically like 2 lines of thinking when it comes to this defense. Either you try to get as many fights on the payload as possible by starting with a close hold, getting a retake around here and then getting a final fight here. So you do that to build ults. Sometimes you run people like Mei or Sombra just to build their ultimate and try and get your way into a fight. Because the more time on the clock you burn, obviously, the harder it is for these opponents to commit, and they're forced to commit ultimates just to cap this first point, which makes transitioning your heroes a lot easier. Or you focus on the one point of this map where it makes sense to fight, which is sort of this transition between these two corners, where you can take multiple angles around them and really have the only space on the map that really caters towards the defense, where they can play their tanks around this corner up here and contest the payload and play somewhat safe, because there's really no cover that touches the payload on this map other than those two corners, which are very close together.
Yes, this is actually what Seoul does as well. They kind of squat up a little bit, and they put 3 people on the right side, and you're not really going to fight corner. You're going to let the offense come in on the corner because your Widow is very likely holding an off angle here.
Okay.
So everyone's
So they're actually playing this side. So again, similar concept, just on this side of the corner instead of this side. This is where you see teams traditionally play, but I don't think it matters too much. This actually offers less flank potential because people can't go inside here for the attackers. And they're really just looking to crossfire here. I'm guessing Ons is somewhere towards the end of first point, or potentially even on the high ground looking for pot shots.
On screen side is where
Yeah, there's Ons. You can see him all the way over here.
Yes.
Makes a lot
So
more
you have
sense
this
there.
crossfire.
So
you
yeah.
have this crossfire, and you let the offense come in a little bit rather than trying to just brute force it at the corners.
And if the Widow holds
The other way you set up crossfire is something we saw Houston doing a lot. I think it was Houston. Trying to remember now, or maybe it was against Houston, where you let them all the way up to this corner and then you drop behind them, or you use this high ground with someone like a Hanzo who can actively retake, and you take the crossfire by going above and behind them and sort of this angle or this angle at the same time.
this side, it's just easy rotation. Speaking of rotations, oh my word, that's a lot of damage. That's a nice little seat there by Redosin. Fitz and Toby end up finding kills of their own, however.
These trades are really good for Seoul.
There's a big, they need to be able to kill Redosin here. They just have to get him. Yeah, there we go. Eventually managed to find the kill. If they didn't find it,
This should lead to pushing them off this corner. Yeah, and at least forcing them towards the end of first point. Oh, that pick is really bad if you're Shock. They can't even res that, I don't think.
Yes, it was a trade, but it definitely favors the offense as they're able to get around
Yeah.
the corner here. San
So
Francisco's
now,
defense is now in a completely different position. They're going to.
this is where you don't want to be holding as defenders, is by the end of this point, because your retakes are through such open and wide space. It's very easy for the defenders to mark the chokes that you have to come through, as we see Prophet just standing there with this bow charge. Ons is forced into more predictable angles. Basically got one of 3 angles he can use. Same with Striker. And the tanks can't really go aggressive, or they risk overexposing themselves and going out of healing range. So this is most likely going to come down to a pick on either side, and that's going to lead the tanks into aggression. Yeah. Obviously, Seoul can't just stay on the payload, but they have more options for finding picks. They've got more angles they can take, like this one from Fitz, and they got more opportunities to surround and capitalize on them. Still winnable. Yeah, Shock thinks so. They force Nano out, which is not bad, but they're going to cap this. Yeah. Good fight from Shock. They did what they could from the hand they were dealt, but I think those late stagger kills, especially the one on Striker, meant they were kind of resigned into a really poor defense.
But it's also because Violet wanted to switch off heroes. On the second point, you want to have an Ana on this defense so that you can sit a little bit further back, make sure everyone's healed, because everyone's going to be playing different angles. Mostly where you see Choi right now, that's Sigma's spot. He holds that, and then the snipers are going to take left side and middle if need be.
Nice hook.
What an unbelievably timed combo.
Yeah, Super. I'm not sure. I mean, I guess they don't want to play Super's ball, but like, I feel like on Volskaya I would have played Super's hog.
Oh no, Jesh has been found out.
But
yeah,
if they felt they needed ball for first point, which I don't think they absolutely needed, they could have gotten away with a hog attack, but that's their prerogative, so it makes sense.
Life after life, Jester always tries to get that angle.
I mean, you get behind them, one hook, one kill, and then you just use.
And again, you see,
I mean, it's easy peasy, right?
Soul trying to set up these off angles, but Shock are just completely shutting down each of these chokes with their front line. It's so hard for any of these DPS to get past Super and Choi. And then as soon as they do push Super and Choi just a tiny bit back, you've got Ons and Striker ready to go either aggressive, like you see Ons here, or holding angles. Oh no! He almost got the mini. That looked so crazy. So that's sort of remember I was talking about Volskaya's second point. That's the idea of Ons trying to go aggressive at the same time that Super and Choi are taking aggression. So they were absorbing aggression, and they answered that by taking aggression with someone else. You could also do the same on this choke, for example, or even just by playing up here, if you're like Striker taking a late peek up there or something. But this doesn't pay off when the timing's a bit off, either by getting found out, like we saw Ons, or by being too slow, and the fight zone like leaves his area of influence before he's even able to take a peek. But that was pretty clutch from Fitz to actually find him out. Somewhat by accident too. The timing, he just got like he got timinged. If you're a fan of CS:GO lingo.
To do something here. Striker and Ant are already dead. Ant gets resurrected as Super ends up.
Gesture trades out. Oh, nice absorption from Marvel there to block the rock from hitting the res.
Resurrecting Mercy. Choi dead. The rest of the Shock are going to follow him as well. Maybe Wolf finds a kill in the Valve. Maybe not. So
I can't tell if like a lot of these problems Shock are having are because of them looking a little less coordinated on these maps, which is weird because this is their map pick, or if it's Soul stepping up more. It seems to me, especially on Volskaya, that Soul was being a lot more proactive if you compare it to their Hollywood, for example. But on this map, it just feels like Shock's giving up a lot for free, which is uncharacteristic. Prophet is also just a monster.
Storm arrows from Prophet. Playoffs Prophet, they call him that for a reason.
Playoffs Prophet.
But they still just gain so much space from just that single kill. Yeah. Soul have been playing so aggressive on this map, Hex. Every single time Shock try and set up like a little tent to kind of camp in, they say no. We just kind of run at them with nanos and the hogs. Super gets dragged all the way in. They do trade his life for Profit.
Instantly killed. Also notice Shock's playing Ana now. They had Zen on first point, but they offer Ana maybe for longer ranges here, so that Ana can play a safer distance away from frontline and still effectively heal. But I'm not sure exactly. Maybe they feel Gesture is like too much of a threat and they need the anti-nade for him, or they need the nano for Super.
Continue to push this through gateway, and now the defender's advantage is gone. It's gone, Jack.
They have cast a cursed. It's just a little bit. I was saying he's probably one of the best Widowmakers in the world.
Yeah, Shock is uncharacteristically on the back foot a lot. And maybe it's just because Prophet's actually a monster and is dominating these fights.
That's 2 kills, but Gesture's going to get a little bit more. He's nanoed and Anti's going to be able to get his breathe off as well. Goodbye,
oh, is this going to cap? Oh, no. No, it's not.
SMG's Gesture to death. And luckily enough, though,
get him, Toby.
Quick enough. Super comes back on board to stall for some additional time as well.
Thought you were supposed to have class by the time my stream was supposed to start, but I guess not. Oh, nice. When do you have class?
But still, 1 minute and 30 seconds remains for them to regroup and go for another push.
Prophet is just running this Storm Arrow to perfection. He's got 8 Storm Arrow
Prophet's,
kills.
Yeah, Prophet's actually... So the reason like Hanzo kind of fell off of meta for a while is because he just wasn't as good of a dueler when he got the Storm Arrow nerf. He wasn't as good of a dueler as Ashe even. But Prophet's pleading a different case.
If you mess that one up, unfortunately, mate, you'd end up in the drink.
Oh, rip.
It's not something you'd want to see on the highlight tapes, that is for sure.
That's weird.
Trying to take over this high ground
here. Or attempting to, we should say. It's a little bit more harder than it normally seems. Or the 1v1.
Get him with the SMG. Oh no! He really thought he was going to get the Mega from them.
And now Fitz can just basically reign free. Super does come up with a kill onto Prophet as they do try and push in. The res was good as the Valkyrie was popped from Toby and a nice little
Soul's popping off.
Into a shot. Another kill for Gesture. He is absolutely on fire on the hog and he's receiving all the support in the world.
Like I said, like there's not oftentimes you see Shock opening themselves up like this, where individuals are getting picked off so consistently. by Prophet
It's a
there.
hard map to finish, but Soul had the absolute correct strategy every time.
I think
just using
Dynasty's
the
doing the
wall
right
for
thing,
Prophet on the left
and
side,
they're
that left
not
side is what you have to
relying on
take,
their front line as much,
otherwise
because
the
Shock
Hanzo and the Widow are just
seems
sit
to
out
base
there,
their tempo a
left
lot
side from the
off the
offense
enemy
perspective,
front line,
obviously, it's
which
right in
works
the center of the
great
screen right now.
on tighter
That ledge
maps,
you have to take,
like we saw
especially when you're
on
coming in,
Hollywood
because
First
just
Defense, for
look at
example.
all
It
of
works
the
great when you
space
can
that it's able to
predict
cover, and
teams
just
following their
it's
front line
too
in,
much
trying to
damage.
rely on the
Soul
space
did a
front line's
great job
creating.
of taking that
But when
over
Prophet's
and
just able to
just
do his own
out.
thing, and he's getting these duels off that he realistically shouldn't. As defender, Shock should be ready to answer those things, either with a shield in Prophet's face to make sure he doesn't get any kills, or with like prediction and scouting to make sure they know where he's coming from and they're not exposing themselves to it. But so many times, not only Prophet either, also Fitz finding like the Widow 1v1s.
Coke Energy comes in 4 delicious flavors. Coke Energy, 0 sugar, cherry, 0 sugar. And there's about the same amount of caffeine in a can than there is in a 12-ounce cup of drip coffee. So fueled up, ready to go, ready to jump into queue, or just ready to sit down for a long night of some Overwatch.
I wonder if those are any good. I've never actually tried them.
Zero sugar cherry. It's very,
That's
very,
one of my
very
favorite
tasty.
That's what I'm drinking right now.
That's what I'm drinking right now too. I have the evidence. I'm on film.
True. True.
Shock opting for Ana off the bat. They've given up on Zen.
I think just Soul just played that really well.
I think just having the extra tools is nice, and given that they're not able to go as aggressive as we've seen them before, they're able to, Soul's doing a better job of answering their aggression by, like I said, finding those flank opportunities with their DPS and not relying solely on the space of the front line, not overcommitting to the enemy front line, stuff like that. Soul's playing a much smarter game, which means the Zen pick's actually getting punished. Oh my goodness, what an execution.
And goodbye, Soul Dynasty. That will be it. That's
Alright, well, Shock was ready for that hold.
Just double sniper in a nutshell.
God damn.
Arns finds 1 kill, Striker finds another 1 shot, and then Arns finds another one after the res came through, and that'll be it. That's the first corner completed. Second corner coming up, and Soul Dynasty are going to be able to touch, luckily enough. But let's have a look at Arns and what... I mean, look at this. He knows exactly
Oh my
where.
God.
It looks like he's shooting through the plant there as well. Of course,
Oh
most
my
players do play on
goodness.
low settings, and I can't remember if that plant is there on low settings or not.
I think that plant is there, and I think he just saw like his feet and just knew where his head was based off that.
Number 2.
Oh, take the shot! Oh, he finds a better one!
Misses the next. Oh, Moth comes in, takes the bullet to the brain, fits on the flank of a lifetime, takes out 2 members from the San Francisco Shock.
This is how you have to play these DPS. Because they offer nothing else to the team in terms of utility, they offer nothing but pure damage and these pick potentials. You need to use creative positioning and these timings, because that's your only tool in your kit that can really benefit your team to find space like this. So the fact that Fitz got that positioning at that time so perfectly, and not only that, but landed the 2 shots, obviously, just completely opened that fight up for Soul, which is insane. Like I said, like typically you'll see in these other comps, people like Tracer or Sombra or a Ball to open up fights, but when you've got such a static composition, a high threat but highly static composition, your options are very limited in terms of what you can actually do to get into fights. And I think that's why Shock struggles so much, especially on offense, because they're not earlier maps they were relying on capitalizing on the enemy front line by either working around them or just catching them off guard and one-shotting them. But now Soul's playing a much slower game, a much more DPS-centric game, and it's leading to these openings.
No DPS now available for the Shock.
Is Shock going to get full held here?
Resurrection onto Prophet brings back both DPS now for the Dynasty, so they're just forcing the Shock out and turning their health bars into old charge for themselves. They're actually trying to force this situation out. I mean, they're even nanoing Choi open forwards, and Marvel's just going to be able to back off. I'm not sure that nano is.
Not sure why Choi's staying here. I feel like he's going to get punished.
I mean, Soul is just using the nano just to keep Gesture alive. Every time Gesture gets anti-healed, that's when they're using
Okay,
the
not
nano.
going to get punished,
And
but
then it
oh,
allows
this
him
is
to
actually
save
looking
his
bad for
freedom
Soul
when he
now.
gets flux. That's why he's able to live through that
Again,
flux.
this,
They just know
my
when
God,
to use
Prophet
the
again just
resources.
finds a way
But
in.
The most important piece of this puzzle for Soul
Prophet,
is Gesture.
he's too good. So again, like I said, this part of the map for defenders, like past this line, your options become very limited. Your angles for Striker and Ons, sorry, not Striker and Ons, for Prophet and Fitz become like one of 3 options basically. You can focus this lane, you can focus main, or you can focus this lane. Your terms in terms of going aggressive, becomes very, very risky because the distance you need to close to where important members are going to be, as in punishable members, people like the Ana that we saw over here, people like the Widow maybe on these angles, stuff like that, is such a long distance that unless you're taking a sniper duel and killing them off with bullets, you're not going to be able to close the distance on them and actually punish them with your front line. So your options become very limited because the amount of time it takes for your front line to move off of payload to punish some zone on the map is too long, to the point where they'll likely get punished themselves. Or just completely give up payload pressure. And your options for DPS, for finding openings, are extremely limited, like I said, where you're very predictable in one of 3 areas. So the fact that Prophet just got 2 kills is actually insane.
Okay, Violet and Super are dead.
And now he can just follow up.
The DPS for Sol are just coming alive.
He can go as aggressive as he wants here, knowing he's got like a res to back him up if he takes a losing duel.
Gesture too. They're looking at almost a complete 6. Playoffs Prophet is entered the building. He's joined the server. The shock might just go down here, and that will lead straight onto a map number 5. Reverse sweep potential for the Sol Dynasty if they manage to hold the shock here on first.
So like, look at the space that Prophet was working there with here. So look at the space Prophet has versus the space that all of Shock have for a fight right here. Even though Super gets hooked right now, I think it's actually due to the fact that Choi was focusing here at the same time. And I think because Choi's focusing here, Violet's also focusing here, meaning Violet's not able to react to this. They're not able to react to this hook. But given the space that Shock has, they should 100% have the advantage in a fight right here, a fight on payload. But they don't because they're mistiming their aggression. Also, well, Super getting hooked, obviously, is the biggest thing. But the fact that Choi is aggressing at the same time that Super's getting hooked, the fact that Violet's not watching during a time that Super's getting hooked, is just instant death.
This is brutal.
That speaks to me, again, I think Shock's biggest problem is finding aggressive opportunities. And I think that speaks volumes to that because they were trying for too much at the same time. They were trying to slow play it, where they're threatening all these different areas, trying to bait them into pushing one area, and then they would capitalize and collapse on that one area themselves with better space. But because they were playing so slow, them trying to split the threats actually meant that they couldn't answer threats of their own. And Super getting hooked is just the victim in that. Super's on ball now. He's got to try and touch. I don't even know. Can he? Wow, 2-2.
Soul has come back.
Soul is stepping up. Prophet is just a monster, number 1. But Soul's team play, the fact that they're not overcommitting, not getting caught out pre-fight, not overexposing themselves until they're ready to fully commit, is showing like a much better synergy compared to Shock. And they're actually just running circles around Shock on that map.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it comes down to...
All right, back to Busan.
Pull it back. I mean, look, this series so far has been phenomenal. Seoul picked Volskaya into San Francisco, which I thought was a mistake. San Francisco picked Havana, which Seoul hasn't looked great on. I mean, just so many things have gone right. And you're right, it's the players that we didn't necessarily expect from Seoul stepping up. Because when I look at Seoul, I see like 4 really, really good players. Widow, and then you run.
All right, Busan, again, we're on ball comps.
And then you have, usually it was sure that Map 5, what a way to kick
They're really going to play
off
ball
our
sig,
weekend.
not ball hog.
Doors
Okay.
opened, and there it is. The TP forward and Fitz setting up on the Widowmaker exactly how you predicted.
So a bit of different comps here. So interesting. See, typically you'd think the Ashe Widow team would be the one playing Sigma, but it's the Widow Tracer team playing Sigma. And I'm not really sure why. So this map in general is very rotation heavy. You can just run around the point nonstop. You saw this a ton in Goats, where teams would be like trying to catch people off with hacks or stuff like that by forcing rotations all the way around this point, nonstop on the high ground. And no one wants to touch the point too early because it's so easy to focus the point from everywhere else on the map. The fact that they're running Sigma, to me, signals that they want to play a little slower and less aggressive to enable Ons and Violet. It means they want to set up in more defensive zones and force them into those zones, force them into On's sightlines, into Violet sightlines with Striker and Smurf. So they want to set up maybe up here and then boot people around until Ons gets a shot on them. Boot people around, isolate people. If people try to go aggressive on these members, you have Choice Shield to peel from them. You have the Rock, you have all that. And in addition, then they open themselves up to the two-man dive of Smurf and Striker, where if they're committing their tanks, for example, to pushing Choi's group, then Smurf and Striker can isolate Prophet, isolate Bedosin, whoever. But the fact that they just don't have a Hog means that eventually that defense will just get worn out because there's not enough active close range threat. There's the long range threat, and they can like hold this position and threaten a lot of the map, but they can't push out tanks because they don't have the threat on a Hog. So it's going to come down to whether or not Gesture can actually get in proper position to punish these backline members, because I think he's going to have to do that regardless. He can't be trying to peel for Striker and Smurf. He'll just get rolled around. And I really think it's going to be up to Prophet and Fitz going like really aggressive to take angles around this backline and really either nullify their position so that you're holding in areas that just completely deny on the sidelines, or you're going aggressive into them with Gesture as part of that push. So Gesture's going to have to line up with Marble's aggression, with Prophet and Fitz aggression, probably even Bedosin's aggression, to completely nullify these three. Because once those three are down, or once any one of those three are down, they just lack a lot of threat potential. They can't hold as much space, they can't put out as much damage.
Strike on Traitor is not something to scoff at, that is for sure. But Marble just helping them take the high ground here, so yeah, the setting up is truly in progress right now. Smurf, yeah, I don't think he expected
Smurf can disrupt these people, but he can't commit.
Stops him from
No,
burning.
and they're set up. This is exactly what you want. You have your damage boosted, Ash on the stairs, Widow is in the window.
Oof.
That's what happens.
Yeah,
because now you're
On's just forced into an awkward angle. Again, Choi's not even with him. I'm not sure what Choi's even doing this fight.
Moth ends up going down. No resurrection and hardly any heals now for the shot. The tank's gonna have to play
Gesture
rather
gets a kill on Moth by just existing. Marble's rolling around taking aggro. Okay, there's Choi. He's holding that ground I was talking about, but it's not valuable enough.
Having it there for a brief moment. They kind of let it go for just a second for just pressure on the front line. They do end up killing Smurf, of course. And no one willing to take the point just yet. Striker in the back, he's done himself a pulse.
Yeah, Striker's struggling to do anything by himself.
Back towards the point and just trying to punish the tanks. The sticky goes out, Gesture dodges out the way.
Gesture goes down. Okay, the trance comes out, which will close out this fight.
It looks so good actually for Dynasty to start this
Very interesting.
and start this map off as well. But no, the Shocker coming back. They do manage to cap the point, find the res onto the healer as
So
well.
it seems like, again, Shock's playing this style where they want to bait people in, and Choi on Sigma obviously has a lot of tools to peel and to kite. So as soon as they bait Prophet, Fitz, Bedosin into aggressive positioning, then Striker can go aggressive, and then once those members are handled, or at least either dead or out of the fight or busy dealing with Striker, then Ons can get shots off, and then Smurf can look for disruption in either group, either in the frontline group or in the backline group.
If he knows where Fitz and Prophet are, he can just almost solo flux them. I think it will be worth it. Gesture with the hook.
And yeah, with Ash Widow, it's going to be very hard to take space. Although On's going down to a Gesture is a nice start. Trades back and forth.
As the flux comes out,
Looks like this is Souls.
Flux couldn't even get the whole cast off, in fact. He ends up falling to Fitz of all people, and Soul ends up gapping the point.
Ons has to be careful here. Picked off.
Pancake.
So we'll see
Shock has a few more tools to retake.
Obviously,
Obviously, they've got the ults in their bank. That Soul just has nothing right now, coming up on Nano, but that's it.
Oh, there's the mines in the back.
Yeah, completely back.
Goodness, how did they
Smurf solo disrupting the backline means a lot of space for Ons and Violet.
Striker almost gets run over too. There's the backline engagement. However,
Striker can even peel for ball.
As Arns falls, but Marvel falls afterwards. It's all our Soul now just trying to stall at this point and just keeping Prophet alive. There's one kill, there's another, and Prophet is falling pretty low as the Shock do manage to take control.
Violet has had clutch kill after clutch kill.
Yeah, it just seems like Shock's game plan is just to keep people alive. for long enough that Violet and Ons can come
Then he
online.
gets a kill on a
Of course, Striker and Smurf being opportunists and finding ways in themselves. Fitz now swapping into Sombra. They need something to get themselves in, and they want to be able to punish Smurf.
Can be very, very difficult, so he's just going to switch it up. They would like to get a hack onto Smurf and just punish him because he's just been running roughshod over the back line.
Hack on Choi is nice too. Into a hook.
Of the Widowmaker, it seems. Nice hack onto Choi, but Violet again, Hex, is going to find yet another kill. But Gesture lays waste
Nice
to it.
hook. Oh, he had no ammo. Okay, he gets the kill.
But the melee was enough with the nano boost damage as well. Gesture is just unbelievable. On
Gesture's doing a ton of
another
work.
Kill. Actual solo carry from Gesture currently. Prophet is fighting on the point.
It's interesting because I think Super is a better hog than Gesture, at least for their team. But Gesture's much better hog than Smurf. So with Smurf in, I don't think they want to run the hog mirror.
Flux will probably be the opener they want, and they're going to have whatever they want as far as angles go, because there goes Infrasight.
Other Busan maps, they'll probably run the same comp on Sanctuary, but downtown I think they definitely want to run Hog Sigma probably. Because that's a very hard map to rotate around. It's a lot harder map to play ball just in general. So if Shock wins this one, they really want Sanctuary. If it goes to downtown, I would give the edge to Soul.
Target for him if they can build it up, that is. But Ocean's already dead. Arms gets jumped on, and the Transcendence used to push them forward. Gesture going pretty low as Fitz is stunned up and can't make it back to the point, and now is just Shock just bundling on. Soul Dynasty have to be able to touch right now. They got 96%, but Shock are now 99. Marvel Intel going down. Someone needs to touch, but no.
They didn't touch.
Toby was flying in towards, I believe, Fitz,
That's-
but wasn't able to touch the point in time, and Shock.
That's a
will find
heartbreaker
round
for
number
Soul.
one. Soul Dynasty right now, Hex, need the complete reverse sweep. They need to take these next two stages back to back.
I mean,
to
honestly,
secure
like,
the series.
Shock was in pretty good
If you just
control
think
of
about
that
our
fight,
very first control
but
map
still.
of the evening, Seoul always looked good. They were in the lead, and San Francisco was just able to clutch it out on the economy at the end. Had Seoul been able to touch and stall that out, I believe Fitz would have gotten an EMP, and who knows what happens after that.
Yeah, that's true. EMP was building. I wasn't even looking at the alt economy. I was just looking at who was on point.
Soul, Farah.
Oh, here it
Here's
is.
the try
Yeah.
to touch. Marvel goes down.
Marble's dead. And then
It was hard for people to get in. Oh.
Mercy flying in.
Yeah.
Toby. What a
Okay,
shame.
Soul goes back to Farah.
Farah
Surprise.
again. So yeah, they're
Fitz
running.
can just deal with
They're
Arnsey,
running
which,
ball
to be
sig
honest with you, Arnsey's
on
looked all too
downtown.
high for the last couple
So
of
yeah,
maps.
like I said, I don't think they want to take the hog matchup
The second
just
map,
ever
he-
with Smurf in.
kinda shut down.
I think they had learned
But
that.
if he can do the same once here, I mean, that's perfect for them because there's nothing to stop Prophet
Violet
from
on
doing all this damage.
Baptiste.
Well, we have the Violet Bap now. It is the most aggressive and most offensive Baptiste you will find in the league.
Point is unlocked. Shock looking for the cap. Can anybody touch from Soul to stop this from going?
I wonder if he
forward?
just
They
wants to
cannot. You see that
put out more
Prophet was
damage
trying
as
all
Baptiste versus
might
Zen.
to try and get
Using the
some
high grounds
sort of
obviously compared to Zen. Zen has no safe locations on this map whatsoever, especially versus a ball. So I don't hate the pick. I would expect something like an Ana, but Baptiste can do somewhat similar healing, especially with Choi Hoban in the mix. Like he doesn't have two dive tanks to worry about or anything like that. I don't think they're going to find much use out of the window, like the amplification matrix, but the lamp should be a pretty good tool for dealing with stuff. Dealing with hooks, dealing with barrage, dealing with just hard engages from ball. Oof. Yeah, I would give this map's edge to Soul just based on composition. Prophet's even keeping Farah here because he knows how heavy these chokes are, how important these chokes are. So this is probably the easiest map we've seen so far for Prophet to play the Farah.
I don't think Violet knows that. I mean, it's just the way he plays. It's why he is what he is. He almost gets the kill. That's a
Ons.
huge open. It is a huge open.
Can they actually res it up? You see this timer going up. It doesn't like they can. And,
Prophet,
that barrage
okay.
on the point, clearing the mind to this point. Prophet almost goes
Prophet,
down to
what are you
it.
doing?
Striker's gonna
Why would you
fall with the
commit
kill.
barrage to just a
There
ball?
we go. Another double
I mean, you're not going to
kill.
find like a 6-minute barrage or anything, but at least commit something to like,
Apart from these ones, it feels like
I don't know, the enemy Baptiste?
Offensive.
the enemy Widow.
No, no, that's Moth's job. Violet's
I don't
playing
think they
Unit
even needed to
76
answer
sometimes
Marvel
referred to. Like,
on
just
point,
his
or not Marvel,
accuracy.
sorry, even
This is what
answer
we
Smurf on
expect
point there.
out of
Like there was no
Violet. Yes, he's
threat
played a lot of
from
Zen
that
lately,
from
but if you
Smurf rolling in,
remember
putting
middle
down
of the
mines.
season, his bat play set the standard of what Baptiste play should be.
So he's just playing with his Widow. Violet is.
Safe here too, mind you. However, here comes Gesture once
Ooh,
again.
doesn't get the lamp out in time.
Soul turning it up. Moth dead,
I'd like to see his
Arn
damage
dead,
numbers.
Choi dead. Goodbye, Shock on the point now. Are the Seoul Dynasty forcing this one out? But the Shock once again
Goes
like
down.
70% now. This is two-fight territory and maybe a
This
little
was
bit
really
more
just
too,
opened up by
actually,
mines,
because they
wasn't
can
it?
stall forever. Your Tracer and Wrecking Ball on this point. 4 melees for Profit to eventually kill Striker, and he just keels on over as Arns peeks his head around the corner and takes it clean off.
I mean, yes, he's res, but that means res is down right now too. San Francisco again with a pretty.
I'm
good
surprised Seoul
ultimate
doesn't
setup here.
run
They're gonna have Flux. They're gonna have
Hog
Pulse Bomb, which could
Sigma,
absolutely
actually,
insanely
instead
win
of
a
Hog
fight.
Ball.
Moth also with a Valkyrie. It's hard
But
to
they've
Valk
just
on
committed to this
map when
comp
you've got
on probably
Widowmakers
every
on
map
both
here.
sides, but makes you a little bit more elusive.
God, I love the way Jester's playing. He's just hiding behind as bigger objects as he can find to try and find a flanking whatever. Just a Smurf, Choi, Violet, Arn, Striker, Pulse Bomb on the
nice
side.
try, Prophet.
Does go for it, does miss it. Striker sends out a Pulse Bomb of his own.
Striker finds
those,
his,
and now
though.
Toby's going to go down as well. Soul have no healers left. But it doesn't matter because Jester's alive. If Jester's alive as well, alive and well, this fight is not over. Violet eventually finishes him off, but is end up taken down by
Oof.
Marvel. But right now,
So many back and
the
forth
Shock,
fights.
if they manage to cap here, Soul are on one fight territory. 80% now in building for the Shock, and they've got ults to spare, Hex.
Well, San Francisco's not going to be surprised by anything.
A lot of these
either,
fights,
because
to
Infrasight
me,
is
it
gonna be up
seems
for Ons, and they have both
it's just
tank
coming down to
ultimates.
individual
The tank ultimates are enormous here because Soul has to
value.
come back. They're going to have to come back into a minefield, and even
Like
if
it
they
was
get their
not
kill,
that
we
big,
could
but like
lift
Striker
them off
finding the
point
pulse
to
on
win
Ana,
this
Prophet
series.
not finding the pulse on Ons.
Their minds are on the point to
Just
get
made
the
that fight
touch
that
as
much
well.
easier for
Arn's
Shock.
in trouble, but not for long. So he grapples to the skies. And now it is up to the Shock, maybe to just try and even flux them off. OT is taken down. Someone has to
Are
touch.
they gonna-
Someone has to touch.
So many C9s!
Ends up touching the payload again. The point is gone.
My
And the
goodness.
San Francisco Shock are just
Oh,
gonna do
Soul.
it. The wrecking ball was coming in, but
Oh,
again,
God.
just not enough
I
time
hate to
was
see it.
remaining, and Soul end up going down.
So, like, yep, Soul. Oh, man, I don't even know what to say. That was, tragic. Unlucky indeed. For sure.
On
A
Busan,
good fight from Seoul,
the
and they were, like,
Shock
going toe-to-toe
end the
on...
series 3-0. 3-2,
I would say, like, I don't want to say, like, on the maps that mattered, but,
oh
like,
my word.
that Busan was
What
not
an absolutely
the peak Soul,
heartbreaking
and
way
the first
to
map was
lose
not
a
peak Soul
series
either.
That Soul had
Um,
clawed their way
Yeah,
back
Oasis. Second map,
Whew, I expected
Hollywood,
this
I
to
think
be a
they
different
just
match.
underestimated
I was happily
Shock's
surprised with what
Shock's
they get a
Hollywood.
kill onto
Like the
Creative,
way
which is a
Shock
bulk
held
of the
first
healing.
point, it's just like it seemed like Soul was not ready for that. They were not ready to get through that kind of stuff. So a lot of that to me just seemed like they weren't as well prepared into their team comp as they thought they were, compared to Shock, who has like very, very set, clear game plans. But then as soon as Soul sort of changed their style up a bit, played a little bit slower, played a little bit more DPS heavy instead of tank heavy, Havana was a prime example of them just dominating a map. So definitely will be interesting to see them on the losers bracket. I think they've got a good chance of coming back through, but we'll see. So yeah, that was the winners semifinals first match going to Shock. Not bad from either teams, honestly. Looking really, really close. I think if anything, it showed that Shock has some holes in their game plan, especially on offensive modes. And if they're going to be sticking with this composition, with this hog composition, I think teams are going to be able to beat them on set maps. I think if you're someone like Shanghai, for example, looking at Shock's play from this morning, they're looking at ways that they can capitalize on their strongest defenses and really stop Shock before they get going. Because as soon as they do get any sort of advantages, or as soon as they do start playing their own game, Shock look very, very confident, really, really fast, really, really punishing, all that stuff.